because of our fast-paced world and the noise and technology, our body doesn't actually know the difference. Like the tigers that are chasing us are like our emails and our pings on our phone and all of our demands. And like our body is constantly trying to respond to that.
You're listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with your host, Michael Palmer. Listen each week as inspiring guests share their secrets of success to help you increase your confidence, work smarter, and build a business you love. This episode of The Successful Bookkeeper is brought to you by PureBookkeeping.com, the proven system to grow your bookkeeping business.
Welcome back to the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Palmer, and today's show is going to be a fun one and a healthy one. Our guest is an experienced executive leader and transformational coach who's also a certified functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner and board-certified holistic health practitioner. Tiffany Cagwin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
It's great to have you. You know, I love to start off with our listener getting to know you a little bit. So if you can let us know your career journey leading up to what you're doing today, that would be helpful.
Sure. I'll give you the cliff notes because it was a long, winding journey. It actually started when I was 17, and I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease called Crohn's. And many people know that. For anybody who doesn't know, it's a pretty intense diagnosis. And so at 17, you can imagine, like, that was pretty devastating. And I was trying to go to college and live my life. And at the time, this was in the 90s. And so there wasn't really anything for me to do to research it. You couldn't Google anything. You couldn't look things up. And so I just had to listen to doctors, and what they were telling me was that there was no reason for it. There was nothing I did to cause it. There was nothing I could do to make it better. I was just going to have to take a lot of medication for life, probably have multiple surgeries, just try to do my best to get through life, you know, between flare-ups. And that kind of sent me on the path of trying to figure out more about health. And because it didn't make sense to me intuitively that this was something, when I ate, I was in pain and it affected my digestive tract, but they were saying food didn't affect it. And that just didn't make sense to me, that there wasn't any correlation. So I got really interested in health and wellness at a young age because of this. And I just kind of went on a quest of trying to figure out on my own different things that were going to help me just feel even a little bit better. I was on a lot of medications, but even with those, I was in the hospital a lot. And, you know, so I was just trying to figure out different diets and anything that I could do. And I did start to figure some things out that were helpful. Fast forward, my career journey was, you know, I started as a teacher, then I went into business through all of this. But eventually I found yoga. And this was probably mid-career. I was at a point where I was in universities and I was working my way up through university administration. I thought that was going to be my path. But yoga came into my life. And what happened, the turning point there was that as I started doing yoga, I started noticing an impact on my symptoms. And I was like, oh, interesting. Like, I was doing it for exercise, but I did notice that my mind was calmer. I wasn't because I'm a pretty like type A, go get 'em, always moving kind of person. And I was much more calm and my symptoms were less severe. And I was like, well, this is interesting because this feels like a correlation between stress and my symptoms. So that was kind of another layer for me, which led me into the next part of my career, which was yoga, because it really started to help me and I wanted to help other people. And I left corporate. I opened a yoga studio in 2011, grew that business into pretty big business, had a couple locations, 75 employees. It
Wow.
grew into, it grew into a pretty big operation, which was amazing, but you can imagine stressful. So it was like I was giving wellness to people at my own expense, and not intentionally, but it was a big business to run, and it was 7 days a week. And so eventually, about 10 years later, the train came off the tracks for me with my health again. And at this point, I had been off of medication, I was in remission. And so when that happened, I was like, okay, I need to sell the businesses. I need to take a serious look at my health. So many advances had come out at that point around health, holistic healing. I knew that I had been feeling okay, so I didn't look into them. And so I sold my businesses. I went back to corporate America for 4 years. I was in remote tech as like a head of people, which I know this all like is so disconnected. It's such a strange,
amazing.
it's
So,
such a strange journey.
It's all good. I love it. Little pieces of the puzzle being collected all the way along here.
And and I think like when I think about it, the thread was always service, wanting to help people. That kind of thing was what the thread was. But during that time back in corporate America, I started studying functional medicine and really taking seriously my health and trying to heal. Because at that point, I had 5 different autoimmune diagnoses. It was a cascade, and that's what happens. Like your body kind of goes into chaos, and then more pile up. So I healed myself of all of them, and not remission, like clinically gone. And at that point, I was like, well, I'd over the years had collected so many pieces, because there's no like panacea, there's no one solution. It's kind of a lot of layers. And I was like, I figured out all the layers, and there's people who need my help. So I transitioned out of corporate again, and now I help people with their health naturally.
We'll get back to the interview right after this word from our sponsor. Introducing Dext, the #1 bookkeeping automation platform that makes your life easier. Dext captures your client's data with incredible accuracy and delivers it seamlessly into your workflow, integrating with over 30 accounting softwares. Imagine having more time to focus on what truly matters, like helping your clients, growing your firm, or taking a well-deserved break. With Dext, you can trust the data is accurately extracted, categorized, and submitted every time. What if communicating with your clients could be simple? Your clients can easily send in the records via mobile, email, or drag and drop. With built-in reminders, everyone stays on the same page, eliminating the hassle of endless email chains. Are you ready to streamline your bookkeeping processes? Join thousands of accountants and bookkeepers in the Dext community. Go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com/Dext to book a demo today and see how Dext can make your work life easier. Thank you for hearing from our sponsor. Now let's get back to the interview. That's quite the journey. And so what does it look like today now? You help people. You've gone through all these, you had a business that was had infrastructure and offices and locations and staff. Corporate, is a whole nother way of living. And now your business, how do you help people today? What does it look like?
My business is completely virtual. I meet with all my clients online. And the great thing is that the diagnostic testing that I do, I can just mail it to their house, order lab work, and then we meet virtually. So I can meet with people
Amazing.
Literally all over the world. There's really no boundaries. And it's amazing because I can help people anywhere. There's no restrictions. So people find me, various ways, podcasts, word of mouth. And then I'm able to help them because technology makes it possible. Yeah.
That's right. Now you had Crohn's. I'm familiar with Crohn's, not super familiar like you would be familiar with Crohn's, but my best friend had Crohn's. This was mid-90s, didn't even know what it was, lived in the hospital for years, in and out, in and out, in and out, and really challenging to go through. You've gone through all of that, but you also, like, you mentioned an autoimmune disease. So Crohn's is an autoimmune disease,
Yeah.
right? But you said you had 5
Yeah.
autoimmune. So you had Crohn's, and then do these other ones have names? Or?
Yeah, Hashimoto's, rosacea, eczema, rheumatoid arthritis. And then at some point, Hashimoto's, it kind of bounced between Hashimoto's and Graves', which are 2 different thyroid diagnoses. So that would change between the 2. So yeah.
Wow. So those other ones, those are Crohn's, like eczema, very common.
Yeah.
A lot of people have eczema, my wife, my son. And so there's a lot there, and a lot of people would be impacted by this. You've gone through and figured out how to rid yourself of these. How do you get to where it's like it's not clinically cured? You said recession. It's not recession, it's clinically. Tell us a little bit about what that means.
Yeah, so when these things are in remission, they can tell. So when my Crohn's was quiet, because you would, they'd have you on medication or different treatments, and it would go quiet. You could sometimes go for years without having any sort of flare, but they can do diagnostic testing and they can see if the disease is still active. And in my case, for many years, I would have quiet periods, but it was still active, and they can find different, in Crohn's, they call it granulomas. They can find those in your colon. Rheumatoid arthritis, there's different markers in your blood. So they can, it's just that it's there, but it's quiet. It's not doing anything. Versus clinically gone means no evidence of it whatsoever. And, blood markers, any kind of diagnostic test. And then, of course, no symptoms, but you could have no symptoms with remission. So that's the difference, is with clinically gone, there's no markers whatsoever.
Right. So it's not, there's nothing there.
Right.
And so what was kind of the breakthrough that because you went into this different level, you're working a corporate, and I'm guessing that gave you more time to sort of just dig deep into your own situation and learning about all these things. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, and so what I realized was that there's a couple components, and one, of course, the obvious is nutrition and lifestyle. I thought I knew there's a lot of noise out there now, right, about healthy diets.
Noise. Lots of noise about everything.
About
it's
everything.
Like nothing but noise.
I know, exactly.
If I could get paid for noise, I'd be a billionaire.
So, right? Yes, you're right.
Yes.
There's noise about everything. And especially in the health world, it's like this diet, that diet. Everybody's yelling at you. This is the right one. This is the right one. Mm-hmm. And so I was following a lot of those. And so one big breakthrough for me was understanding that there is bio-individuality, and there is no one diet that is like the diet for everybody. And so it was a matter of really learning to tune into.
That should be a breaking headline news. Hot off the press. There is no one diet that solves all problems.
And then all the noise would start coming at me, because they would start yelling at me.
They would attack you. Yes,
no,
you're wrong.
It's keto,
right.
it's carnivore, it's vegan. Yeah,
yes.
Yeah, pitchforks coming at me. And that was a huge lesson for me, was learning how, of course, I was eating whole foods. And here's the other thing. I realized I was complicating it, because we also get swirled in this superfood and this supplement and this, and you're taking all these powders, and it's like, actually eat real food that was grown in the ground, that was like nature provided. Eat real food, eat as locally as possible, eat seasonally. It's quite simple, but that's actually not even what people consider food anymore. So it's so funny, when I started like changing my lifestyle, people were like, well, what do you even eat anymore? I'm like, food. I just actually eat food. I don't eat things out of a box. I just eat the real food.
That's right.
It's just, we're so disconnected from that. So that was breakthrough number one, was learning how to tune into my body, try different foods, see how it felt for me, and not because somebody told me that was the right food for me. And it was like aha moment. The other thing was continuing to deal with stress, because, at this point, we all know this, right? Like, there's enough evidence, everybody's talking about it, but it really does cause a bigger impact than we realize. And this is the other thing. Everybody has to find their own way to reduce their stress. And there's no, it's like what works for me may not work for you. And so that becomes a really individualized process too, of finding what calms you, what gives you that break in the day, what, are you stepping away from your computer and just like taking breaks. It doesn't even have to be these huge things, but it's like allowing your body to just calm down, because in this world of noise that we're talking about, one of the main things I learned was that we are caught in a constant cycle of sympathetic overdrive. And there's, we know like the sympathetic system is like that fight or flight, like the tiger's chasing you, and the parasympathetic calms you down, rest and digest. Well, because of our fast-paced world and the noise and technology, our body doesn't actually know the difference. Like the tigers that are chasing us are like our emails and our pings on our phone and all of our demands. And like our body is constantly trying to respond to that. And we're kind of stuck. A lot of people literally are stuck in sympathetic overdrive, and the parasympathetic doesn't even turn on. And so that's problematic. So that was another thing I worked on. And cleaning up a lot of toxins was huge. Like, unfortunately, our world has kind of been bombarded with toxins. It's in our water, it's in our food, it's in our products. And really taking that, I used to be like, oh, come on. Like, it's one of those things where it's like, well, everyone uses it, everyone does it. It's like that myth of normal. It's like, well, it's, if everyone's doing it, that it's normal. It's like, well, is it normal, or just that it's just because that's what everyone's doing? Like, that doesn't mean that it's the right thing. So yeah, those were like key components. And then I'll tell you the final piece. And this was the pushing it over the edge part, because I'd healed really significantly, still struggling with a few lingering symptoms. And I stumbled upon people talking about circadian health and circadian rhythm, and essentially being in connection with nature. I mean, it's just quite that simple. And nobody was talking about that. Not even the functional medicine doctor I worked with. It wasn't in any of the books I read. And I really started to understand and kind of put the pieces together that we've disconnected from nature, and the way that our bodies are constructed biologically, we need it. We need the sun, we need the trees, we need to touch the earth, we need to be near water, in water, the sun especially. And I started thinking, like, so many people like don't get sunshine during the day, and it's
no sunshine.
Yeah. And it's critical for your health. So when I started applying those principles, it was like that was the magic formula, and it all came together, and this is what I help people implement in their lives now.
Wow. So interesting. All of these like pillars that often people are like, they're in a pillar and they're not. It's like, oh, I'm in the diet pillar here. And it's like, I'm going to only do this and that. And, and then they're sitting there looking at their feed all day on their phone. And I'm not saying that to be, because I do that. It's just life, right? And then the other thing that I noticed recently, which is just sort of didn't really think about it, but like it was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, is both my wife and I have tinnitus. And it's not severe, but it's there. And there's nothing that can be done about tinnitus, according to doctors and stuff like this. And, I've never gone that far to go, nothing you can do about it. Okay, I'm fine. I'm good. I'll just live with it.
Yeah.
But what happened with both is we were away for a while, and we were out of the city. We were out in Eastern Canada, where we're in nature all the time. And the tinnitus for my wife, I didn't really notice it because it's not that bad for me. But she was like, oh, my tinnitus is back. Because when we got home, we live in just outside of Toronto. So it's like a big city. And I think it was the noise pressure. Like, nobody talks about noise pressure, in that noise actually is like it creates pressure, like in order to move our ears. it requires pressure. Well, in the city, there's like incredible noise pressure that you don't know. You become like the fish in the water. You don't know that this is not normal.
Yes.
So you talked about the nature aspect. So we were kind of thrown into this situation where we were getting more nature, more sun, less noise pressure. We talked about noise earlier, and it's like I got back and kind of thinking about it. It's like there's just so much going on around us. You talked about toxins, like noise, the light we get from the devices and whatnot. It's toxins, right? That are affecting us, and we think it's normal. It's like, oh, is it normal for me to sit in a factory with 50,000 decibels cranking along? Well, if all my people are doing it and that's what we do, then that's considered normal, but does not mean that it's good for us.
Yes.
For sure. So this is interesting. So for our listener, 100%, they're going to be dealing with all sorts of different health issues, right? We all are. Every person that's at ages and young people as well goes through these issues. And these are some really critical pillars that could help dramatically in the quality of our life. Like we could talk about, a health issue, like a chronic health issue, like the autoimmune disease, but even just our alertness, our our sense of well-being.
Yes.
Are we happy? Are we, tired? All of those things are the experience of life. And those things too, it's like that could be flags. It's like if I'm like, I'm feeling like I'm tired. It's like, well, what is this? What's going on that could have a long-term impact on our, could create a chronic health issue, right?
Yeah.
So when you get a client, what does that look like in terms of getting them on a new track? And do you do specifically like people come to you for, I've got this issue? Or is there like a multitude of issues? What's that look like?
I would say it's a multitude of issues. And I approach it differently with each person because each person's unique, their lifestyle's unique. And I'm always looking to get the biggest impact for them quickly so that they start to feel better, so that they keep going. So how I start to work with each person is different. But at the root of it, every symptom that's showing up in people, there is a root cause, and it's at a very, very, very base level. Like you have to go so far upstream, and then all of these symptoms are running downstream, and it might show up as different symptoms for you, different symptoms for me, but ultimately it's mitochondrial dysfunction. And we learn about mitochondria in school in 8th grade. They're the powerhouse. They're the energy, of the body, but they actually run all the programming in our body. So my perspective with people is I'm trying to support mitochondrial health, because when you can support mitochondrial health, that will start to rev up all the healing process, all the energy production, which then just accelerates the healing. The body wants to heal and it knows how to do it. So it's more that we have to kind of get out of the way. I have to look at what are the specific stressors, because they're going to be different for everybody. So when I start to work with somebody, we do a really extensive, I would say it's an investigation. We do the really thorough assessment, questionnaires. I'm talking really in depth because I kind of consider myself like I'm a health detective, and I'm going to see things that maybe you don't even see, which is why it's helpful to get an outside perspective. And, I'm going to say like, okay, I see where we need to start. I see what's going on. So that's what we're doing at first, is trying to figure out what are the biggest hidden stressors. And I want to remove those, because that's kind of step one, is like remove the biggest stressors, give the body a chance to calm down. And then we can start to layer in the things that are going to help it heal. And all along the way, I'm like educating, because my goal is that I want to help people feel better, and they will feel better by the time they're done working with me. But more than that, I want to empower them to understand the why of every single thing we did. I really feel strongly that people shouldn't just go through a program, follow the steps, listen. I can make that easier. Just here's my program, follow everything I do, you'll feel better. But then what happens when there's the next thing in life that throws them off? Or,
Yeah.
like they need to understand every component because life's going to keep happening. That's just what happens. And I want people to be empowered to understand, like, oh, okay, this is the pillar, this is the part that's off. And now I know how to recalibrate. And so that's who we work with. I do diagnostic testing. And then, coaching them, take them through a nutritional program where they're figuring out the foods that are right for them. And then we go into this really customized protocol based on their needs. And like I said, mostly it's a lot of education of like, here's why. Every single part of here's why. And so by the end, they're empowered. I want people to be able to take charge of their own health and know that. Because to your point, I wish people wouldn't wait until there's some chronic illness. But that's what happens. Like, you do kind of feel these nagging things, right? Like, oh, I'm just kind of like, I'm really tired every day. But then everybody is. So it's like, oh, how tired are you? Well, I'm more tired. And then it just becomes a who's more tired contest. And
That's
it's like,
right.
well, wait, are we all supposed to be tired? Is this normal? So, it's those kind of things where it's like when you start to feel, yeah, you've maybe lost that spark, you're not sleeping well, your digestion's a little off, maybe your skin's a little weird. Like, these are the times to get ahead of it before we can help once it gets that bad, but you'd be so much better off like
Easier
getting
to
ahead
work
of
with.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
key. You're talking about helping people figure it all out and going upstream. There's a couple of analogies I love. It's like, one is sometimes they think there's a simple solution. It's like, someone loses their keys. It's like, oh, lost my keys. Well, where'd you leave them? It's like, well, if I knew that, I wouldn't need your help. And often people think it's going to be that easy, right? And so there's this problem. And the other piece to it is the domino. It's like the final domino it's like, well, you knocked out the final, it's like that other domino knocked you over. Blame that other domino. It's like, well, could be 10,000 dominoes here.
Right.
And often people are looking, they're looking for the easy path. Me and everyone else. It's like, can it be that easy? Is there a formula? Can I just take a pill? You got to go back and find those dominoes. Often, I see it all the time. It's like people, maybe they have an experience in their life that they haven't dealt with. And, all these pieces, so it's the food that we're eating, it's the environment that we're in, it's the pressures that we're putting on ourselves, it's what's the context that we hold around those pressures. If someone's like, oh, the house is on fire, and it's like, some people would be like, that would burn out their stomach, and they have holes everywhere in their stomach. Some people are like, it's just a building,
Yeah.
So what's the difference between those two? How does that person get there and the other person, they could be like, well, the house, we have a hair on the carpet, and they have holes in their stomachs from the worry so it's all these. So it's not one size fits all, just like the diet, just like all of it. So that's why I think it's interesting having someone have the opportunity to have a guide like you to help them navigate through the dominoes and figure out where they are and where they're going and where they've been and how to improve life. Our listener works really hard. There's a lot of work. There's an endless amount of work. It never ends. That's a great problem to have if you're in a business that, it's like, oh, all the bookkeeping dried up. There's no more governments aren't collecting tax anymore. We don't have to report anymore. That isn't going to happen anytime soon. But they can get caught in this grinder, work all day, get no sunlight, not eat healthy. And that can lead to long-term, some serious things. Yeah. And I think it's really exciting that you have found solutions that can get some of these really tough ones like eczema. I see my wife deal with it. It's like, I'll put a cream on, but it's like, okay, some of it helps a little bit, but it's not the root, you're just going after a symptom here. You're not going after the solving this problem.
Yeah.
And so that's a bit of like a canary in the coal mine. It's like, well, what's going on underneath the skin and why is that happening? And you've gone and done all the work to figure that out for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah, I want to say actually all through college, I worked at an accounting firm. And so I know what it's like.
Yes.
And I watched, I was just doing administrative stuff, but I watched, the accountants and the bookkeepers, like, oh my goodness, they didn't leave.
Burnout.
They didn't leave. Yeah, there was major burnout. And, it's that way in a lot of industries. And I did it myself. I did it myself with the yoga studios. And it's like, we can all fall into that trap where we think that we just have to. We have to get that next thing done. We can't stop. And, in my case, like, it was actually a blessing how sick I got again, because it was a massive wake-up call for me that, like, what am I doing? Like, what is this all for if I don't have my health and I can't be there for my son and I'm in the hospital and I can't, when that happened, like, this is like a little tiny detail, but like, I had just gotten a new puppy. I had wanted a puppy my whole life. I'd never had a puppy. And we got a golden retriever and he was mine, and his name was Newton, and he was the most adorable thing ever. And this is when I got sick. And I couldn't walk the dog and I couldn't play with him because my joints were swollen and I was too sick to leave the house. And it's like I was missing out on the joys of life because I just let myself burn out, overwork, ignore symptoms, do things to cover them up. Like, it's not worth it. And, but I will say that I also recognize that there are, there's reasonable demands, and we can't all just like walk away from our responsibilities and the things we have to do. And so a lot of people I work with are busy professionals, and I'm not going to tell you, like, you got to go to a 4-hour work week and then meditate the rest of the time. And, it's not realistic. Like, no, I work with people because there's always ways. This is why it's helpful to have an objective observer, because I can always find ways. I can always find those little ways to make little tweaks that start to help and move the needle. And you can make a lot of improvement with little changes. And then when those little changes happen and you start to feel better, then you're ready to layer more. But I kind of move methodically that way because I don't want, the healing journey shouldn't be another overwhelming thing.
That's right.
And so it is possible, like, you don't have to give up your goals. You don't have to not be, a driven person, but, there are changes that can be made.
Absolutely. And I think that's the key thing to get across right there, which is whatever the situation, there's an opportunity to improve it in micro improvement.
Yeah.
And a micro improvement is the beginning of a macro improvement. And so that's, if you're going to put, be a high achiever in micro improvements, and you're going to have a lot of great macro improvements. And what a great place to focus on, if we think of high achieving, it's like, I'm a high achiever in my health, right? In well-being.
Yeah.
It's like, because guess what? If that goes, you got nothing.
Right.
No amount of money in the world fixes a neglect of that component. There's been a lot of examples of that. I mean, Steve Jobs is probably one of the best examples of having more money than most on the planet, and yet his health went, and there's nothing that can be done when that goes. And so it's super unfortunate for anyone to go through what you've gone through and so many others go through. And there's it's like a long list of health issues that are out there, and many of them are avoidable. That's the key. The number one cure for anything is prevention.
Yes.
And so I love what you're doing, and I think there's real hope and excitement inside of what you're talking about with nature and sunlight and food. These are not, you don't need to have billions of dollars or even hundreds of dollars to implement these into your life. It's a little bit of navigation and time, maybe a bit of investment into helping you come down off of whatever crazy ledge you've gotten yourself onto. But that's exciting and really positive for anyone who's listening, that this can be done. And if they're having a challenge with it, you're someone who can help them navigate it and be healthy.
Yeah. Beautifully said.
I'd love to know if there's resources or anything people go, wow, that's really cool. I want to know more. I want to get to know Tiffany better and learn more about her story and anything along those lines that would help them learn more and get in contact with you.
Yeah, the best place to go is my website. It's just my name, tiffanycagwin.com. My story's on there. You can book a call with me. I do free consultation calls. I spend time with people. I love to talk and just see like if I can help. And I'm always really honest with people if I think it's a good fit or I don't, because I really want people to heal and I want to help people. So I encourage anybody, reach out to me, book a call, ask me questions. I'm here to help.
Lovely. Lovely. Well, it's great. Tiffany, thank you so much for being on the show, your generosity for coming and sharing your story and some of the amazing things you've been working on and how this can help our listener.
Thank you so much. It was a joy to be on. Thank you.
Beautiful. And with that, we wrap another episode of the Successful Bookkeeper Podcast. To learn more about today's wonderful guest and to get access to all sorts of valuable free business building resources, you can go to thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Until next time, goodbye.
You've been listening to The Successful Bookkeeper with Michael Palmer. For more information and to download the resources mentioned in this episode, please visit us at thesuccessfulbookkeeper.com. Thank you for listening.